This show is based on Lakota star knowledge, and those concepts are start with reality begins within. And this is because that's how the universe was created. So each one of us, we have a universe inside of us. What I mean is everything inside of you, yeah? Your physical parts, your kidneys and your liver and your lungs and vessels and veins and all that kinds of stuff, tendons and even things that make those. And your soul, your emotions, and your mind, yeah? All of that connected. And the connection point, it's all connected to each other, yeah? But there's a center connection point, and that is your sacred center, and that's where you begin. That's where there's some sacred pieces inside of you, and that's where they're located. When you're asleep, you're close to those. Yeah. So when people say, you just cut off 1 hour of your sleep so you can live 1 hour more," that's bullshit. That is total bullshit. I really don't like it when people talk like that because they think that when you're asleep you're wasting time. No, you're not. You're close to that sacred center, and plus your body needs sleep. That's part of our human experience is sleeping, and that sleeping is where we receive inspiration, warnings, and sometimes just entertainment, entertaining dreams. Sometimes we meet people. Sometimes we go through a whole adventure that seems to last days, yeah, in the dream, and that shows how deep in sleep you are. The deeper in sleep that you fall, the more time you can experience there. It seems like an eternity, but when you wake up, maybe you just took a small nap for like an hour, yeah. But in the dream, you were so deep that the whole week went by. You know what I mean? It's like that. That's cool, I think. And like I said, you receive inspiration, ideas, and all kinds of wonderful things from your sacred center. And you can receive more of that if you open yourself up. And to open yourself up means living in a healthy way. Means to take care of your four parts of yourself, your physical body, your mind, your emotions, and your soul. And like I said, they're where they meet is the sacred center. And when you do this, you're going to go into your past and face everything. And so that means all the emotions are going to come to the surface again with those experiences. But that's just the door. Yeah, don't worry about that. All you got to do is express those emotions without hurting anybody or anything, and that includes people and places and animals and plants. Don't hurt them. Don't even hurt yourself. Just express that emotion. Go and shout or whatever, and hit a punching bag, but don't hit a tree. Yeah, and um, or get scared or whatever, and then take some deep breaths. Yeah, do some breathing exercises just of breathing deep. Yeah, and then calming down. Just listening to everything that's happening around you. Each second goes by, just listen closely to every little thing, and then slowly go into yourself, and then you reach a point of you're here right now. Yeah, you're every 100% here. Then you look at that experience and start saying, "What can I learn from that? How can I make the best of that?" As you start thinking like that, those emotions leave, and you start coming to peace with it, and it turns into a blessing. It's the teacher. Yeah, it's teaching you something. When you do that concerning your difficulties from your past, now you're learning how to do this with everything in life. When you encounter something new for the first time, you check it out. Yeah, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's not. You'll never know unless you check it out. Yeah, that's something for the first time because we'll encounter things similar all the time. So you already have a good idea. So what I'm talking about is when you encounter things for the first time. Yeah, and also it helps you to enjoy blessings even more than you could before. So, and then you learn that difficulty is just a part of life. It does not mean it's bad. It just means it has to be worked out. And then it leads to a blessing. Yeah, no matter how difficult that is, and no matter where it comes from. And with blessings, you enjoy them, no matter where they come from. Yeah, and when you do this, you're when you live this way, you stay in the present moment, and that influences your future in a really nice way. Okay, and then as you're establishing this peace inside of you, it's gonna show in the way you communicate because reality begins within. So how you communicate, that's a reflection of what's going on inside of you. So if you're healthy, your communication's gonna be healthy. Yeah. And like I said, as you experience things, you express the emotion, and then you start learning from it, or you enjoy it if it's a blessing. And that's how you develop emotionally. Then you develop spiritually. You cannot develop spiritually without developing emotionally. Yeah, you need them both. And then you see that there are at least three perspectives to everything in life. Sometimes there's more than three, but the most important thing is that you look for three first. Once you find three, if something has more than three, then you'll see it. Yeah, but look for three first. And then you realize that it's not about good or bad, it's about is this something I can learn from, or is this something that I can enjoy, or is this something that just is peace, or it confirms something I already know. That's what it's about. Yeah? But there's people who don't take care of themselves. And therefore, what happens there is that they have this tendency to look at something and they only look for the parts they like, and then they say that's good and anything else is bad. So they lump everything into two groups. And one group, they make it an enemy. They hate it. Yeah? And that's how man creates good versus evil. Then they got really complex about it, even to the point of developing this belief system that includes a god to say that they can use to say well he knows everything, he's perfect. They even say it's a guy, yeah, and say and so he's on he's our god, and so he's perfect, and so that means we're better than you. See, it's just like little kids playing in the playground here. And then they assign the bad side a bad god, which is Satan. And then they build up all kinds of beliefs to support that. That next come demons and angels, and then they say things like, if you're not with me, then you're against me. And that's, again, really disrespectful to say that, because it's always putting things into just two opposing factors. Or then they'll say, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Again, bullshit. Yeah, that's bullshit, because that's still putting things into two perspectives. Nature is not this way. Even in nature, there's daytime and there's nighttime. But does that really happen? Does it all of a sudden it's just dark and all of a sudden it's just light again? No. There are two connecting points where the day connects into the nighttime. That's dusk, where you don't see the sun but you still see its light. That's the connection point. That's a sacred time. And then again, at dawn, before the sun rises, but you can see the sunlight. That is a second sacred time. That's another sacred time. These are 4 points here. Yeah. So you see, day it's not sunny, and then all of a sudden, ching, it's nighttime. It doesn't happen like that. Yeah. There's an in between. That's how nature is. That's how the universe is. So what makes you think it's just day and night? It's not. Therefore, it's not just, you know, this and that. It's not just two things. It's more than that. Yeah? So see, even nature sees that. And when you live in a healthy way, you see that. But people who only see two things, they don't acknowledge these two times when the sky is orange and red. They don't acknowledge that. Yeah? Even though it's right there in front of them. They don't acknowledge it. They only acknowledge the daytime and the nighttime. See? Dualism. And and part of this saying I only like this, that also includes, they only want to feel one certain emotion. Some people only want to be happy. Some people only want to be angry. Some people only want to be sad. Some people only want to be scared. All of that is an emotional illness. It's an addiction. People they only want to feel that one emotion, and they'll do anything to remain in that emotion, and that leads to illness. Eventually, you're going to get physically sick. Yeah? Your mind is going to be trying to think of things to do so that you can only feel that one emotion, and that's you're becoming an addict. Yeah, your thinking becomes addictive now, and eventually it's going to lead to abuse. First, self-abuse, and then abuse of others. Sometimes that happens subconsciously, and we're not even aware of it. That's why it's important to take a look at yourself to see. Then you find it if you are. Huh? So that's duality. When people only want to be in one emotion, and when they do that, they trap it. That means they cannot develop emotionally, which means they cannot develop spiritually either, no matter how many ceremonies they go to. No matter how many pipes and Indian names and drums and rattles they have, they cannot develop spiritually. As long as you believe in good versus evil, you will never develop spiritually, because that's duality, and that's keeping you in one emotion. So you say things like, think only positive, happy thoughts, as if positive was good. Yeah, for some people, and they get a pregnancy test that says positive, that doesn't make them feel good. Or when they do a HIV test and the results come back positive, that's not a good sign. Yeah, you see what I mean? Positive and negative do not mean good and bad, and that's not the only two things. There's also neutrality, and then there's more. But it's more than just positive and negative, and that's not good and bad. And people make that mistake of assigning good to positive and bad to negative. Yeah, and that's what dualistic people do. They assign labels of good and bad to everything, and then they stay away from it, saying, "You're evil. You come from the devil. Stay away from me. My God will destroy you, because my God is perfect." Nothing in this universe is perfect, because that's an illusion. That's terrorism. That's extremism. Yeah? The perfection is not the goal, because it doesn't exist. That's not what life is about. Life is about living. Yeah? It's not about, oh, I wonder where I'm going to end up. No, it's about paying attention to right now and actually living and enjoying what's happening right in front of you. Sure, you can make plans for the future, but you got to be in the present moment overall, so you don't miss all the fun and learning that's happening right now. See, these are foundations of what Lakota Star Knowledge is about. It's about, getting to know yourself so that everything inside of you is nurtured. All the connections inside of you are nurtured because of your healthy lifestyle, and that helps you to be at peace within yourself. Now you're able to be at peace with everything around you. Now remember, being at peace does not mean you agree. Sometimes you'll disagree with others, and that's okay. As long as you don't try to force each other to, believe each other's beliefs or try to prove the other one wrong, then you're okay. You can agree to disagree, and that's still peace. It's still respect. So this is how it is, yeah. It's a healthy living, and when you can do that, then you're able to be, at peace with the world around you or with the universe around you. So before you can understand the universe out there, you have to understand the one inside of you, because reality begins within. Now, dualistic people, there are some dualistic people who get so extreme that the only way they see peace being possible is for some fictitious super alien nation somewhere out there that's going to come to this planet and save all of us. See, that's a projection of an inferiority complex and emotional insecurity. They want somebody else to save them. They don't want to save themselves. And then when the truth is, we are the only ones who can save ourselves. So that's kind of a disorder there, a personality disorder when people talk like that. And believe me, I checked these kind of people out before, and I know that they're really messed up because I've really researched them, especially those that they try to use Lakota things, but they use them very stupidly, and when they try to write Lakota sentences, the grammar is totally false. And they mix up the male and female genders and in the language, and they don't conjugate. So they bought a dictionary and they just take an English sentence and they translate it word for word, and that's not how you speak our language. So I know these people, they don't know this and they don't take the time to research anything. So that shows me they don't know themselves either, because how you communicate reflects the kind of person that you are. If you take the time to check things out, that's a good sign that you are a healthy person, and that because you've taken the time to come to peace in your life. So you're a healthy person. But when people just read a National Enquirer and say, "Oh, gee, look at that! The lady had a Bigfoot baby," and they actually believe that to be real. Oh, is the UFO landed on the Washington D.C. at the White House and stayed there for 5 minutes and took off? Look at that! They don't even take the time to check it out. They just believe anything they hear. All Indians are good. All Indians are mystical. All Indians, don't make mistakes. A lot of Europeans think this of Indians. They really idolize us. They really think we're all it. They think we're super intelligent, superhuman, and that's not true. It's really not true. So that shows me that when people think like that, that shows me how they are, that they're really unhealthy. Yeah, they don't take the time to check things out, which means they don't have peace in their life. Which means they're dualistic. They see things only as good versus evil. See how that works? So this is the kind of things I talk about on this show. And it's all founded upon that reality beginning within. So you have to, if that's where it begins, then that's where you should go to start a healthy way of living. So you can start seeing yourself as a human and not as a skin color. Yeah? The medicine wheel, the four colors of the medicine wheel only represent the directions. They do not represent races of people. Because in the beginning there were no races. Humans, Lakota Star Knowledge says that humans come on the earth in 5 locations. And at that time, the earth was only one continent. And the way it was laying was that what was east and west back then is today north and south. That means something shifted. Yeah? And as when the 5 groups come into contact with each other, they intermingle because they realize that all their babies speak the same language. They all drink water. They all have a language. They all have a way of communicating. They have they laugh at the same kind of things. They get angry and sad and scared at the same kind of things. And they all can eat the same foods. And, we all breathe air. The sun warms us all. And that's how we realized we're all Ikjetwe out there. We're all humans. That's how it was in the beginning. That's what Lakota Star Knowledge says. Then people found, we're growing now. So they started branching out. And population was growing. So people were branching out to live in other locations. And as they moved to new areas, their bodies had to adapt to that ecosystem. And part of that adaptation process was the skin either getting darker or lighter. That's where skin color comes in. It comes in millions of years later. So our first ancestors were not created as Indians. They were humans. Yeah, the skin color comes much later. So there's 4 colors on the medicine wheel. They don't represent races. And the red road is not the Indian way. Red represents life. Almost everything on this earth bleeds red. Even most of the plants, they bleed red. That's life. It's not about being an Indian. It's about living. Yeah? Living the star knowledge concepts of beginning with reality begins within and starting from there. So then you learn about the universe inside of you, you nurture it, you establish peace there, and now you're going to automatically understand the universe out there. And it's not about UFOs. That UFO nonsense, that's a mental illness. Yeah? And because people, there's really crazy people out there. There's this lady that has this show on YouTube. I'm not going to say her name, but I saw this. She about every day she has like a 9-minute episode, and she's talking about on the planet Vega. There's the reptilians there, and they come to the Earth quite frequently, and they have an energy that is. And whatever, and then there's these vegetarian aliens that come from this other planet, and blah 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 blah, and what she's saying is that all of the people from that planet are exactly the same, and from that planet they're all the same, and that is, if that was really true, she's being an intergalactic racist, because not all people in the same group are the same. Not all Republicans are smart. Not all businessmen are ethical. Not all Indians are good. Not all white people are racists. Yeah? We're not all the same in every group. Whatever group we belong to, we're not all the same. You're going to find healthy and unhealthy in every group and organization, because it's how people live. It's not because of the color of their skin or their belief system. It's how they live. Humor is really a big part of our culture. People in Europe think we're all stoic and serious, and may the sun always shine upon your shoulders as the buffalo roams the prairie. Bunch of Lakota poets wandering the prairie, and back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, they were prison camps in the beginning, and this is a situation where we couldn't leave, we were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us, and we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that, but once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it, and then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. Yeah. So what we got on the reservation was bullshit food. Yeah, it was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. And these, as I said earlier, these are the four parts of the South. So with the four parts of the South being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan, they come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota Star Knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine men, medicine women, holy men, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. Yeah. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so, it was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside, they weren't. They were Star Knowledge people. Yeah? They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, They passed it down, to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I have this show, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. Yeah, this is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikche Oyate thing. Ikche Oyate means human being. When you live this way, as I said in the beginning, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German or a Japanese or an African. You communicate as a human. Yeah, that's really important to know. So that's how it was back then. Yeah. Now remember, I said that the priest said to the Indians, "We will help your children." So they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. Yeah, the pay was really low, so they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter, and they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered, they were killed, they were raped, they were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all of these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with, because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. And remember, I said these children were told that their families were all dead, so they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people, because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turn to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turn to alcohol and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development. Because the parents don't know how to do it. Yeah? All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. We're incredibly, as a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation.